Welcome back to day 6 of our 14-day crash course. In this segment, I want to go a little bit deeper in talking to you about being an expert at mediation. And to do that, I've got to go back in time. Before I even got married, and even before I even met my wife, I was starting to tiptoe into ministry. I was an engineer for many years and really climbing the corporate ladder, if you will, and I was drawn into ministry by the Lord, just sort of volunteering and just sort of tipping my toe in the water, so to speak. And the first place that I got involved in ministry was a place in our city for troubled boys. It was called the Annie Wittenmeyer Center. It was government funded. It's still in existence today. And I thought that I would go there and help boys learn about God. That was really my thought. So I contacted them and they put me through a bunch of background checks and I passed. And then I get there and they assigned me to a cottage where there were about 20 boys that lived there permanently. What I didn't know is that all of these boys were sexually abused. And it was a rehabilitation center, and these boys were removed from their homes. It was immediately startling because I wasn't prepared. I was in over my head. I was like, God, I just wanted to bring in Bibles and talk to kids and teach. You see, that was my mindset. Teach, teach, teach. That's all I knew. I grew up in a very great biblical teaching home, and I thought these kids would be open to my teaching. So I get there, and sure enough, I'm just going to stay true to my commitment. And I get into this facility, and I see about 20 dorm rooms, and they're all kind of spread around the perimeter of this building. And in each room resided a boy. They ranged anywhere from 8 to 18 years old. So I remember they called all the boys in a room, and they introduced me, and I had a whole box of Bibles that I had bought, and I was going to give them each a Bible. I handed a Bible to a little boy. He was 8 years old, and he took it and he just ripped it and he tore it to shreds and he spit on me and he told me where I could go. Quickly, someone rushed from the corner, one of the staff, and they grabbed him and they tackled him. And they took off his shoes and his pants and his shirt and they put him in a lockdown room that was kind of like a cell. Before you get upset or before you get startled, this was a normal protocol when a boy acts out. And they did this for his own safety. And they put him in a cool down room where he can cool down. And I was horrified. This was a brand new experience for me. And the poor kid, I just handed him a Bible. That's all I did. And so I went to the psychologist on staff and I asked if I could go in his cell or in the lockdown room and if I could speak to him. And they said, sure. So I opened the door and I go inside, and here sat this little 8-year-old boy, and he had some blood running down his forehead from pounding his head on the steel door. And he was still furious and angry. And he was screaming all kinds of vile things that an 8-year-old boy shouldn't know. And I'll never forget, sitting next to him, I was hopeless. What do you say to a boy who was sexually abused, taken out of his home, put into a facility with all these other boys who were also abused? It was terrible. It was horrifying. And so I sat next to him thinking, what could I teach? What could I say? And I found nothing. I had no answers. I was silent. I was sort of stumped. And I just kind of remember weeping. I just remember starting to cry in my own emotion and sitting next to this boy. It was very awkward. I went home that night. And I was praying and sort of speaking to God and confused. And I said, Lord, why would you bring me to a place like that? I don't know what to do. I'm in over my head. I'm the wrong guy. They don't care about me. They don't care about one word that I had to say. And I don't know whether it was a thought that God put in my mind or Him speaking to me or however God does that. But here's what I heard. Matt, for 6 months, I want you to come back to this facility. And I want you to leave the Bibles in their boxes. and I don't want you to teach. I don't want you to start a Bible study. I don't want you to hand out Bibles. For 6 months, all I want you to do is to sit in their dorm rooms or in their rooms and ask questions. And right away, this seemed wrong to me because I was taught as a kid, teach, 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 teach. I didn't know anything else. But I tried it. Went back the next week, walked right back into that boy's room, and I sat next to him in a chair and he's lying in his bed, and I asked very simple questions. Where are you from? What are your parents' names? How many siblings do you have? I tried not to ask any personal questions about what happened to him. What are your fears? How long have you been here? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? And then I went to the next boy's room. I did the same thing. I made my way around room to room to room. I did this for 6 months. I just asked questions. To some degree, this is one of the fundamental elements of being a good mediator, is you ask questions. Instead of putting yourself in a position of teacher, put yourself in the position of servant. I'm here to serve you. As a matter of fact, questions are very, very powerful. Questions have the power of building trust, building relationship. Nothing shouts out more that you care for someone than when you legitimately ask them questions about them. And I don't mean to overdo it, and I don't mean I want you to ask incriminating questions with an attitude. Have you ever sat down with someone and they were totally locked into you, making eye contact, and they tuned out the world and they leaned in and they were like, so how did that make you feel? And how are you doing? And how's your family? And how are you? How's your health? Or as a friend of mine I remember one time I called him and he goes, hey Matt, how are you doing? I go, good, good, good. And he stopped and he goes, Matt, no. How are you really doing? And I want you to know that made me feel valuable. It made me feel worth something. It made me rethink the answer to the question. It made me feel loved. So questions equal love. And I know that sometimes teaching is love and confronting is love, but questions are the bridge into the life of people you don't know. And so I did this for 6 months. I was very patient. I was like, Lord, you release me when it's the right time to teach. When is it the right time to bring in Bibles? When have you, O Lord, tilled their soil, cultivated their soil with a rototiller, softened their hearts, build trust? And so that's exactly what God did. And then all of a sudden, I started a Bible study 6 months later, and every single boy came, even the one that tore up my Bible. And I was there around 3 years, and many, many boys got saved, and the Bible study was deep and rich. As a matter of fact, years later, I remember I was at work, had a long day, and I had a headache, and I wasn't feeling well, and I'm very faithful with my commitments. I never abandon or skip or hardly ever called in sick. But on this one night, I was scheduled to go do a Bible study. And I had already been there for months and months and months. And I'll never forget, I picked up the phone to call the facility and say, I'm not coming. Tell the boys I'm not coming. And as I picked up the phone, I don't understand how, but God just said, whoa, put the phone down. Put the phone down. Tonight, you're going to go. And I don't get these very often, but I just had this overwhelming feeling from the Lord. So I'm like, okay. And remember, I had a headache. Anyway, I go. I open up the door to the facility. Remember, these boys live there full time. They have nothing. All their wrinkled clothes, everything they own is in a cardboard box. And I walked in, and there all these boys stood in single file. And there were 2 lines of boys facing each other, almost like in formation. And they were all standing there silent. And by now, I was I was like a father figure, a big brother, if you will. I knew them all by name. We had experienced hours and hours and hours together. But something was different. They were stone cold, dead serious, emotionless. And I kind of walk in, joking around. Hey, how you doing? And they were wearing, some of them were wearing suit jackets and church pants maybe, even though they were all wrinkled. It was their best outfit that they could find. And I walk in and I'm looking at them and I'm like, what's going on, guys? And all of a sudden, one of them came to me and he said, Matt, we did this for you. For years, you have come and you've served us. You've loved us. You've gotten involved in our lives. You've taught us. We all got together and we decided that tonight we would all put on our best and we would stand here waiting for you to tell you how much we love you. And I just started weeping. I would have missed out on that night had the Lord not inspired me to go. And all of this came about because for 6 months I did no teaching. I waited upon the Lord. I let the Lord till their soil. What in the world does this have to do with you? What does this have to do with marriage mentoring? Everything. I want you to realize that soil that's not ready for the teaching of God's Word is often because of trauma or wounds or bitterness. They don't know me. They don't trust me. They've been hurt. They've been betrayed, which is exactly what so many couples are going to feel like the first night they walk into my home. So God has taught me, build relationship first. Build trust first. Ask questions. Questions can draw people in. It makes them feel comfortable. And the Lord and the Holy Spirit will direct you as to when and how to respond to the answers to the questions. That's why I said earlier, I want you to become an expert at biblical mediation. Get good at it. Because God will help you use it in so many situations. We do family interventions now, a family intervention. I do staff retreats for church staff. I'm a mediator. I've taken this whole mentor training process and I've specially designed it for elders and senior pastors and associate pastors and congregations where I can come in and do a full assessment, and then we're going to identify areas of concern, areas of weakness, and we're all going to round the bases together. We're going to flesh out solutions to the most critical of concerns. You're going to do it together, create a new vision, a new plan, and a new direction. Why? Because when you become one, as Jesus said in John chapter 17, you become powerful. And through oneness, the world will know who sent Jesus here to die on the cross. The world will know who God is. Again, mediation is so key. I didn't say therapy. I didn't say psychology. I didn't say that you're any of those things. I'm just asking you to get good at mediating. Round the bases. You select an issue, confirm the details as to why it's an issue, get them to offer solutions. Get them, not you. I get them to offer solutions, not me. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Why is it so important on third base to get the solution out of them? I'm going to be even more specific. We want to get the solution out of the person who's wounded. So if you're in a marriage and you're the husband and you're really upset at your wife, she's very disrespectful, I not only want you to communicate to her that she's being disrespectful, I want you to be articulate as to how and why. But see, I want to go even further. Instead of just telling her what she did wrong, I want you to articulate what you need for her to do right. I want you to understand that you have a padlock, you have a combination on your heart. I do, you do, everybody does. I have a very special combination that when Pam, my wife, unlocks my heart, in other words, she acts in a certain way with me, it opens up my heart to her. And my combination, my love language, if you will, or my respect language, is unique to me. There's very specific things that Pam can say and do that I find to be very hurtful. Maybe you don't. There's very certain things that Pam can say and do that motivate me, and maybe it wouldn't motivate you. So my job as a marriage mentor / mediator is to get out of the person who's wounded or suffocating, to articulate not only what's happening and why, but what do they need from their spouse. And I want to get that solution out of them in a way that is articulate and measurable. So I would say to the husband, specifically, what can your wife do with this issue where you're going to feel respected? I want to know what, when, how much, where. And once he articulates it, now she has a target she can hit. Much of the time, the reason why the spouse isn't hitting the target is because they don't know what it is. How can Pam ever hit a target that I don't give her? How can I ever hit a target she doesn't give me? So once we extract from the victim or the person who's wounded an articulate solution, now we've got a target. So then I go to the other person, I say, can you agree to these terms? Yes or no? If you can't, then what can you do? What steps can you take towards this target? And so if they say, well, here's what I can do, now we go to the victim, the wounded soul, say, hey, they rejected your proposal, which is okay, because you can't always get what you want at face value. That would be selfish. That would be unbiblical. However, they've taken a step towards you. So here's their proposal. Can you accept that? If they do, that's a score. They got around the bases. You document it. If they can't, then okay, what can you take a step towards them? And we help them negotiate, compromise. And then they score. And then we document it because it becomes leverageable. Now we're going to talk about the word leverage before we close. I've found in doing ministry for 15 years that there's 4 key elements to use to leverage a human. I don't care what ministry I'm involved in. I've been in many different kinds over the years. And I want you to know that my objective is almost always to leverage people from where they are to a closer walk with Jesus Christ. Whether that means get saved, fine. Whether that means a new believer growing up in their faith, fine. If that means a long-time believer that has their heart has grown hardened, or maybe they've fallen astray, fine. Doesn't matter. We're all on a journey. So here are the 4 things I use to leverage people to get closer to my God. Number 1, and I put these in the order of importance, is relationship. I use relationship, my relationship with them. I use the relationship like Jesus. Ask questions first. He was an expert at asking questions. In the Bible, over 88 times, Jesus Christ asked questions. And then often he taught second. He was very good at asking questions. And questions shout out, I love you, I want information, builds rapport, gives me discernment. Now I know what to say. And so I want to build relationship first. I can leverage relationship. If I don't have a relationship with you at all, don't have any leverage. But if I have a relationship and you trust me and you feel loved by me, I can influence you. That's number 1. Number 2 is the Bible. Now let's talk about the Bible for a second. Yes, I use it as leverage, but here's the deal. God gives us the ability to receive Him or reject Him. He gives us a free spirit to either chase after Him, believe in Him, or not. And so the Bible is something that is leverageable to those who choose to believe and follow Jesus. If you choose not to believe or follow Jesus, and the Bible means nothing to you, then it isn't leverageable because you're not allowing the truth of God to permeate your heart. So whether or not the Bible is going to leverage you is up to you. I wish it weren't so. I wish I could just take the Bible, go to the mall, go to a store, and I could stand on a box with a microphone, and I could read scriptures, and everybody who hears it, listens, obeys, and is transformed. That would be awesome. But again, God gives us free will. He gives us the ability to listen, believe, follow, and He also gives us the ability to turn around and walk away. The Bible is number 2, relationship and then the Word. Third is every time you get a couple around the bases. Every time you're done mediating, every time you get them to an articulate solution, which I'm going to put a couple more words to this. Every time you mediate with a couple, you're creating a new command that they built for themselves, or a new covenant, a new promise. Any verbal promise that I make before others for my marriage's sake is binding. So you're getting them to create this new direction that's binding. Let's park that for a second and contrast if you were to not mediate at all. Let's pretend for a second that you're mentoring a couple. You immediately see the problem, and instead of getting them around the bases to talk it out and to come up with their own solution, you barge in and tell them what to do. You just skip all that mediation and baseball diamond stuff. You just tell them what to do, which, by the way, is the number one problem with lay couples as mentors, is they want to tell the other couple what to do all the time. And to be even more specific, we want to tell couples to do what we do. The problem is that's not my marriage. And there's unique things going on in my marriage that may not work for their marriage. Problem number 1. Problem number 2 is you don't get buy-in. You don't get buy-in when you bark orders into the life of another couple. So that's problem number 2. So what we do, instead of barking orders, is we get them around the bases to create a solution on their own. You get their buy-in because they're the ones that did it. They also learn how to do it on their own later on, which is empowering. And you get them to a solution that's articulate and detailed, and they score and they feel good about themselves. And now you write it down and you leverage it against them. So for the next X amount of weeks, you're going to go backwards and say, hey, you made these promises week number 2. How are you doing? You made these promises that you were going to start XYZ. How are you doing? I don't care whether the promises were you're going to pick up your dirty socks every day, you're going to help with the dishes, you're going to cook a meal, you're going to go on a date, you're going to start going to church together, you're going to start paying tithes and offerings, whatever commitments they made, it's a new direction that they created on their own, that targeted their own hearts. This is powerful. And when you get really good at mediating, you just take this method everywhere you go. Even now when I counsel teenage boys who are really struggling, I don't just barge into their life and start barking orders. I meet with them. I have a list of 200 questions that I ask them, and they're random. I meet with them at a Hardee's or a McDonald's of their choice, so I don't meet in my stuffy office. I ask questions about them. I hold back my answers. I hold back all my teaching. I go home and I'm like, oh Lord, would you give me the right words to say, the right timing to say it, the right scriptures to plant, to navigate this boy closer to you. And it's powerful. So that's it. I just want you to get good at mediating. Use the baseball diamond in mentoring marriages. Use it when you go to a family intervention, I bring my little baseball diamond magnet with me when I do family interventions, marriage mentoring. It just works. It gives me a visual roadmap so that I kind of stay out of the way of the Holy Spirit and I sync up with Him. I hope this helps. I hope this encourages you. I look forward to seeing you in the next segment. We're going to go deeper in how to teach. I look forward to seeing you soon.